West of the Rockies, how can we prepare?
Top a few of their machine radios, throw them into darkness for a few hours.
Fighting for our lives, must survive. 5,000 gallons of air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is January the 11th, 2024, and this is episode 414 of Workshop Radio. How are all my delinquents out there this evening? It is a beautiful, balmy minus 30 in East Central Alberta, Canada. I hope you guys appreciate whatever your temperatures are where you are, because it is just damn cold. Alice came in and her hair was frozen walking home from school, and it's about a 6-minute walk. So there you go. So we're going to open up with a new segment this evening. And of course, it's Thursday, which means it's time for This Week in Prepping. I got some good stuff for you, but we're going to start with a segment called Rules to Live By. And I have, over the years, been keeping a list of rules that work for me. Now, you know what the beauty of rules are? They're meant to be broken. But here's the thing. As soon as I list any of these rules as we go along, I'm going to do one every week. Somebody's going to say, yeah, well, that's not an absolute. Now, you're right. These are things that worked for me. But so I got 34 of them. I put them into a randomizer, and it picked rule number 27 this evening. So rule 27, anyone worth hiring is already working. You guys heard that one before? Because it's true. Anyone worth hiring is already working. Now, where did that come from? That came from way back when I started at Home Hardware. Actually, before that, but I was working at Dairy Queen the nights, doing my whole thing and, doing my best to impress customers, just customer service all around. And I get a random phone call from home, at home. I don't even know how the dude got my number. It was my soon-to-be boss that I eventually turned down the first time, Tim. And he's like, hey, I really like the way that you treat me at Dairy Queen. I'd love to hire you. And I said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And then he called me back a few weeks later and said, no, I really would. Here's the offer. And the rest was history. But I really developed this in my time there, because quite often Tim would say, hey, do you know anybody that's, that we need to hire somebody. We can't find anybody good. And I used to just say, the deal is anybody worth hiring is probably already working. And we poached 3 or 4 people over the years from Canadian Tire because, simply put, they treated us great, but they were treated like shit from their management. So for me, in this world, I've really found that people who want to work are already working, and people who are worth investing in are already being invested in by someone else. So remember that. I hope that helps. Use that to your own devices, that's for sure. Who do we got in here this evening? So far, I see my neighbor in Tennessee, off-grid ping. We got Backwoods Butcher, who says, it's time. Andrea Snow, great to see you. Said they're prepping for the coming weather and trying to keep all the animals alive. Byron Roberts, great to see you. And Jake from Ravenwood Acres, also great to see you. All right, so let's pop into the precious metals report this week. Well, it's going to be a segment on precious metals. And there wasn't anything interesting. I didn't find any new products. I did order. So we've decided right there, I think there's seven ounces. So going forward, we're going to just take a flat amount of money each month, as long as it's in the budget, and pick up some silver ounces and just kind of stack that way. We kind of have a goal long term, and we're just going to work on it. It's just kind of like dollar cost averaging, I guess, for stocks, but this is to help stack coin. So there you go. So I picked up this article from a ways back. It's from CBS News. It was from June of last year. So there's a couple of timely references in here that may or may not work, but the fact is that the facts in here are great. And it says, why is gold a safe haven asset? And for those who don't know what a safe haven asset is, and of course, this is not financial advice by any means, but a safe haven asset is typically something that does well when everything else is doing shitty. It was like the old garbage man back home, Greg Thomas. Whenever you'd ask him, how's business? He'd go, oh, it's picking up. Oh, but my dad always said the grocery industry was a safe haven, and that no matter, it was basically a recession-proof business. You could fight with that a little bit, but he wasn't wrong. People still had to eat. So when times got tough, they would still spend on food. They just might not go out to restaurants, that sort of thing. So they're talking about it, and says here that investors turn to safe haven assets to protect their wealth. And that's really what happens. People start getting nervous in the economy. My mom and dad, they used to talk people in, or they used to share the gospel of our RSPs. They grew up reading The Wealthy Barber, if anybody knows that book. And I was just a little kid, and we used to have a guy come by about once a month to go over investments with dad, and his name was Stuart. And as a kid, he gave me the book, The Wealthy Barber. And so dad would always tell people, like, get into investing. And he finally talked his coworker and their parents into investing. They put all their money in, not all, but they put the money in, they were comfortable. And the first month they lost like 10%. They pulled it all out and called it quits. And that was the complete opposite of, going into a safe haven. You're supposed to be in it for the long haul anyway. But so this is investors turn to safe haven assets to protect their wealth. And of course, gold and silver have traditionally been what they call safe havens. So why is that? Well, first off, if you haven't heard this before, gold is a reliable store of value. This is an article from CBS News here, quoting them. Gold is universally recognized and cannot be devalued by overprinting. I love it. Unless, of course, you are a medieval alchemist who is trying to turn lead into gold, but hasn't figured it out yet. It's a tangible commodity used in everything from electronics to jewelry. So it's always in demand. And when the economy downturns, increases the demand. This finite resource is worth even more. It's a hedge against inflation. If you followed Jack Spirko over the years, and I've definitely adopted this, but precious metals are a hedge against inflation. You have a percentage of whatever you want to invest or whatever you have for a net worth in that, and it helps deflect some of the losses. It said here in the 70s, interest rates skyrocketed into double digits, reaching almost 14% by the start of 1980. Over that same decade, gold prices soared from 35 to 850. Insane. So there you go. Kept pace with inflation and actually outpaced it for a while. They also said that it performs well during market downswings, which is not an unheard of thing. For instance, the price of gold increased in 6 of the 8 largest stock market crashes in the last 40 years. Again, a hedge against inflation. Protect your investment a bit by keeping, here it is, the traditional 5 to 10% of your investments in gold. You protect yourself from losses from assets like stocks, which are still worth holding, but must be counterbalanced by more conservative investments. So again, if you lose a portion of your money during an economic downturn, a great way to offset it is by having something like gold or silver that's going to keep pace with inflation and hopefully even outpace it a little bit. Now, the one thing that some people say is, I'm just going to buy gold or buy silver and think, okay, I'm going to make money. When the price goes up, I'll sell it. Listen, I'm going to tell you that right now. Becky and I have talked about it a bunch over the years. It's not worth trying to do. You don't buy silver and gold to make money off it. You buy silver and gold to hold your value, if that makes sense. So yeah, 5 to 10% your investments in gold help protect you from losses like assets and stocks. And yeah, so here's the thing. We always talk about being prepared. We talk about, trying to get ourselves healthy, trying to have enough food, trying to make sure that we don't lose all our money in a financial collapse if that's something that happens, whether it does or doesn't. But the cool thing, again, this is about protecting our losses. Now, also, we can go into the post-apocalyptic look of things. And if shit ever did go sideways, they talk about it up all the way back up here. They said gold is universally recognized and cannot be devalued by overprinting. A part I missed right there was, unlike fiat currency, which is only accepted in certain countries, gold is universally recognized and cannot be devalued by overprinting. It's a tangible commodity. Traditionally, people will trade for it. Maybe not right away, but it's one of those things that if you're worried about a collapsed dollar or you're worried about, losing the value of the dollar quite a bit, it's one way to do it. So there you are. So that is the precious metals report for this week. And just take a look at the community live chat here. Off Grid Ping says, does gold do all the paper sales like silver does, which is how they manipulate the silver market? Yeah, there's definitely, if we're talking about buying, I think you're talking about buying silver and gold as a paper, holding it as a stock investment that's stored somewhere else. You can actually get, I believe it's like monetary funds or almost like our RSPs, but in the form of gold or silver. I don't like that because my reason for buying gold and silver is twofold. Number one is to protect our investment, but number two, to have something to trade or use as currency if something ever happens. And the silver, the paper, gold, and silver stuff, that really takes, I would say, the biggest advantage for preppers, or one of the biggest advantages, out of your hand, because all of a sudden, guess what? If I'm buying silver on paper, then all of my tangible silver is stored in a vault down in Calgary at Gold and Silver Bull. So not my cup of tea. There you go. All right. Guys, we got something new this week, and I am kind of excited. So I'm going to bring this up here for you. This is going to be called Sunshine News. It's an awful, yeah, there you go. So Nicole and I, a little while ago, we did it was Nicole, myself, Sean, and Carrie Brown. We did a entrepreneurial accelerator. And the lady who started with us was Willow. And we tried to come up with some ideas of some things that would work with her personality and her certain desires and things that she really likes, the things she's passionate about. So she came up with Sunshine Prepper News. And I told her, I said, hey, here's the deal. You commit to giving me a piece of content every week for 3 months, and I will commit to putting you on the show. So this is going to be Willow. She's going to be our roving reporter, and she's going to pick a news story once a week to hopefully put a positive spin on things, to take a solutions-based approach to the news. And I think she's great. So here we go, guys. Let me bring it up. We will play it. I'm pretty sure I have all the audio up and running. This is the first time we've done this, but I think we should be good. So go.
Hello, and welcome to today's Sunshine Prepper News. I'm Willow, the Sunshine Prepper, here to spread a bit of positivity on the unavoidable doom and gloom. First, take a deep breath and a big sigh with me to support calming your nervous system. Even if it seems silly, your body will appreciate you for this small, simple step. Okay, today's topic might sting a little bit, but if you can hold a little optimism with me, it doesn't have to feel as bad as it is. And while feelings aren't facts, if you can take in the bad news without getting paralyzed by fear, you'll be more able to take action, and that will make all the difference. Okay, so today we need to talk about the Suez Canal. You probably remember its name from the big supply chain disruption that happened back in 2021 when the Ever Given crashed into the bank of the canal and caused a massive traffic jam. Well, there's trouble brewing around the Suez again, so you better brace yourself for bumps in the supply chain. The Suez Canal is a vital waterway that connects the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. It provides a shortcut for sea travel between Europe and Asia. Ships are able to come up through the Red Sea and cross a 120-mile stretch of land through Egypt, hop over into the Mediterranean, where they can slide on through to the Atlantic Ocean, rather than travel all the way down and around the coast of South Africa. The canal cuts the length of the trip by about 40%, and that difference really adds up in time and fuel. But wait, there's more. Did you know that 10 to 15% of global trade and around 30% of container trade passes through the Suez Canal annually? Over 23,000 ships navigated the Suez Canal in 2022. So the kerfluffle in 2021 caused a lot of prices to inflate because the cost of getting a shipping container from point A to point B rose so drastically. So let's get into some of the fun, cringy numbers. Feel free to take another big, deep breath and sigh if any of this is raising your anxiety. Due to the recent Houthi rebel attacks in the Red Sea, already 7 shipping companies, including BP and MSC, have suspended transit through the Red Sea. And it's also caused shipping insurance for transit to increase from around 0.1 and 0.2% up to 0.5% of the ship's total cargo. That's a 2.5 to 5% increase in cost. So imagine if a ship has $1 million of cargo. The insurance on that was $1,000 to $2,000, and now it's $5,000. On top of that, the war risk insurance has increased over 1,000% since the escalation of attacks. The cost of moving these ships is increasing again, which will translate to higher prices and decreased availability in stores. Also, our not really a friend Goldman Sachs is coming out and warning that oil prices could go up significantly, which, as they word it, would push inflation up to unprecedented levels. They say this because about 7 million barrels of oil travel through the Suez Canal every single day. So Goldman Sachs is anticipating up to a 20% increase in oil prices. Ouch. I don't know about you, but I can already feel my wallet starting to cry a little bit over that one. Some shipping containers are already up over 20%, and allegedly, some people are saying they've gone up 60%. Allegedly. Dear God, I hope not. But either way, now you're more aware of how the conflict in the Middle East may start to impact you. All right, let's lean into that deep breath and sigh one last time, because now it's time for the sun to shine. Okay. What in the world could be the silver lining around this, you wonder? Well, in short, you still have time to take action. To you seasoned preppers, you already know what you should be doing. Of course, keep filling any holes in your pantry, and for lack of a better way to put it, buy your cheap Chinese goods while you still can. And I don't just mean the stuff that you can get at the $1.25 store. If there's specialty items that you want to buy while they're still affordable, like car battery jump starters or air pumps or even batteries and basic medical supplies, if you can afford it, it will be better to buy these things now because your dollars will continue to get you less and less. So slap on a smile and go make a list, because the solution to this one is you. Focus on what is in your circle of influence. Grab life like a big juicy steak and chomp into that mofo. I believe in you. I believe in our community, and I know that the actions we all take now will increase our quality of life when things really do go to hell in a handbasket. Wishing you and your family the best. Sunshine Prepper out.
There, my mic's back on. How about that? I'm really excited about this, guys. And this, to me, is a little bit like the start of maybe my expert council, just a bit. I would love to have a few more segments from community members going forward, 1 or 2 segments a week to put in. And so Yozik said he's late, missed the new host announcement. Yeah, so this is that was a fun one. This was Sunshine News from Willow. So once a week, we're going to have a 3 to 5 minute segment from her where she takes a look at the news and tries to put a positive spin, but more importantly, a proactive and a solutions-based approach to the news. So I'm excited about that. And okay, here's the thing. Willow sent me this, I think, first thing this morning, just before I went live. I don't know if you guys saw it, but the U.S. and the U.K. attacked Yemen over this exact situation. So doesn't mean that it's doom and gloom or doom and gloom or whatever you want to call it. But what Willow said was, if there's something you've been thinking about buying, for instance, I just bought one of those Beaver chamber vacs from, it didn't come from Amazon, come from Beaver, but it's definitely a Chinese import. So if you're looking at buying something, it's probably not going to go down in price over the next while. We've been dealing with inflation for a while. So if you have some funds set aside for this kind of thing, then go ahead and do it. But don't spend money you don't have. Keep an eye on, fill up our gas tanks, do all the pertinent prepping things we do. But the most important thing that Willow has to say is take a deep breath and smile, because I want to tell you right now that if prepping makes a person miserable, you might as well give it up today, because it's not worth doing. It's supposed to give you peace of mind. It's supposed to let you know that your family is going to be safe in an emergency. And it's something that we can do without focusing on all the doom and gloom and all the bullshit that comes with it. So to me, it should make your life better. It should take a whole lot of stress off your shoulders. And Yozik, you are not wrong whatsoever. That's a great one. Buy American or buy while it's in stock. Absolutely. And something like the Easy Does It can opener that I love, a great American made product, but there's a literal shit ton of American made products out there. And we're going we're going to slide that back a little bit, by North American made. But I'm wearing Darn Tough socks from Vermont. They have a lifetime warranty. Right now, they're like $34 a pair in Canada, but they're great when I'm running, and they are comfortable. They don't wear out. And if they do, you send it in and they send you a free one. And there is a depot in Canada you can send them to. And I know, speaking of the devil, no, not really, Mr. Dixon's in here. I know he's been buying some somewhat heavy duty, I think they're Albertan made socks as well, which I need to try out at some point. So there's that. All right, so moving on. Next segment of This Week in Prepping is the Side Hustle Spotlight. I like this one quite a bit. Let's bring this one up here. This is something I saw a while ago. I actually brought up, I didn't mean to, but I brought up the Canadian site first, and it's a company called Refuel. Now, this isn't necessarily a side hustle per se, but this is a business that meets a need that's out there. It's a really cool thing that some people are going to look at and be like, I ain't going to pay money for that. Well, that's right, because you're not their ideal customer. But these folks here looked at something and they're like, hey, let's take an existing thing that people do, go to the gas station and fill up. Guess what? For some people, the time that it would take them to go to the gas station is worth paying someone else to come to their house and fill up their vehicle. So this company, Refuel, there's only a couple in Canada and there's a couple in the U.S. as well right now. I actually first stumbled across them on TikTok, and they will just come to your house. There's a flat delivery fee. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's not cost prohibitive, and they will come. It's a great way to turn your, half a tank is empty tank on autopilot and not have to worry about it. So you come home at night, they show up that evening before you go to work in the morning, and they top up your fuel tank every single time. They also do this with businesses and that sort of thing. But I love the idea that they just come to your door and fill you up so you don't have to worry about it. Now, it's great. You want to do it yourself? Sure. But for me, I love the idea of that. I mean, just yesterday in the cold weather, I went over to the daycare. I looked at Becky and I said, hey, hon, how's your gas tank? And she just kind of put her head down and below 1/8 of a tank. So I said, throw me your keys. So I was going to get gas for me because I was at half a tank and she needed it too. So I did them both. But I like this. And just a few things. So right here just shows the service. They're just in Ontario at the moment. They offer regular and premium gas. They try to keep their fuel price the same or competitive with all the local gas stations. But the biggest thing is they charge a flat delivery fee, and there's no other fees outside of that. So I love this idea of looking at an existing service, looking at something people already do, turning it on its head and saying, where can we make more money out of that? Where can we offer a premium service that works? Now, I'm not saying start up a gas delivery service tomorrow, but I am saying look at markets and do that sort of thing. I thought that was kind of cool. So first announcement of the week. I've moved the announcements to the middle of the show so that it kind of keeps the flow going. But Nicole and I, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, we did the entrepreneurial Kickstarter accelerator for Willow. And we're getting ready to do that. This is not an official announcement to say, here's a link to go to, but this is for people to start getting the wheel spinning in the old brain. So we are going to eventually go to a once a month thing of doing those. We're going to have a application process where you fill out a bunch of kind of generic questions to get started, and then we're going to filter through those, and then we're going to send you a more detailed application afterwards. And the idea is if you're struggling to come up with monetizable ideas for side hustles, full-time gigs, whatever it happens to be, we're going to bring you on. We're going to bring in experts from outside who have done the same thing, and we're going to encourage you. We're going to kick you in the ass, and we're going to follow up with you down the road. So it's going to start out with that. We're going to do a couple to get started, and then going forward, there's going to be a bit of a fee involved, and you're going to get way more value for what's put into it. I can promise you. So anyway, just start thinking about it. I believe we're going to launch, I think she said, I can't remember. Anyway, within about a month, sometime in February, we're going to get the first one going. So just keep an eye on that. All right, so let's slide into my look at the news this week, and it is stranger than fiction. And I like this one. This is from the New York Post. And so where a lot of the prep for this show comes from is my kind of daily or couple of times a day perusal of the internet. If I'm sitting down to have lunch, I'll, bring up Google News or whatever. And because Google's really good at feeding me what I want to see, the more I read these articles, the more articles get fed to me. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I like this one quite a bit. And this actually came out of, there is I think it's on the Daily Wire, a girl named Brett Cooper, a lady, sorry, I think she's in her early 20s. She runs a segment called The Comment Section. She is really switched on. Her parents apparently are preppers, and she was doing a reaction to this article. And I thought there was some good stuff in here. The title from the New York Post is Why Younger Americans Are Stockpiling Supplies Ahead of 2024 Election. Well, I can tell you why, because every election year tends to be a boon for preppers. Post-election, who knows? But whenever, we all know this, that whenever things seem sketchy or, out of place, people tend to want to be prepared, and rightfully so. So, I wanted to read a couple of these little digs, I guess, that the New York Post put in there, but they said hoarding food, water, and weapons was once associated with libertarian extremists. But as a rematch between Biden and Donald Trump seems all but inevitable in 2024, prepping has become a bipartisan activity. On the left, you have people who are afraid of Trump going to declare himself dictator, and on the right, it's a general malaise in fear of society unraveling. This lady named, I'm going to guess her name is Breck Wagner, 39, of North Carolina, runs a YouTube channel that offers advice to younger, more liberal urban dwellers about how to prepare for a cataclysmic disaster. I think I need to reach out to her and try to get her on the show. I looked at her YouTube channel earlier. She's got a couple thousand subscribers, so she's just getting started, but I don't mind. I want to reach out to millennials and Gen Zs and see where their mindset is in this kind of thing. But she's definitely from the left side of the political spectrum, so nothing wrong there as far as wherever your personal beliefs are. But she's worried that if Trump is reelected, he would fumble the response to a hurricane or other natural disaster that is supercharged by climate change, pointing to his administration's handling of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, wherever we stand on these options, the folks coming after us, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and whatever come after that, have been brought up on a steady diet of climate change. And this is where it ends up. It ends up in fear. And again, when we're afraid, people tend to come toward prepping. And this is what's happening for sure. Wagner says she has a 90-day supply of food stocked up for her 6-person family in the event of a similar emergency. Speaking of she's worried about an EMP that could take out a electrical grid. She said, now this is where her mindset definitely differs a bit from some more traditional preppers, but at the same time, her core belief is in the importance of community, and I think all preppers would believe that. So if you're prepared, you won't be a drain on the resources needed to help the people who didn't prepare, she said. In the face of an apocalypse, I want to come out and calmly help people. I want to be able to create a society that, instead of wanting to shoot every stranger, understands our interdependence and creates a better society. Positive, wishful thinking, perhaps. I'm not sure, but I understand where she's coming from. Again, she wants to take care of herself and hers so that she's not a drain on everyone else. Now, she also says, I want to be able to come out and help other people in the community, and I totally get that. And so just an interesting look at, I guess, what we would call the millennial prepper. And I'm sure there's millennials in here, but I think this mindset trickles down to the late Gen Zs as well. And then this article goes on to talk about the guy who launched Fortitude Ranch, who he's loosely affiliated with the Prepper Broadcast Network, but of course they take the left or the right side of things and try to make it look a little more militant, which I guess in some instances it definitely is. So I enjoyed this. I just wanted to say that, yeah, exactly. Jeff Stark. So let's go after this article here. That's enough of that article. Let's go to the community here and see what we got. Jeff Stark says 90 days. That doesn't happen overnight. She's thinking ahead. Exactly. It's not an easy thing to do. Not for anybody. I believe the average family has less than 2 weeks of food. So, you have to spend a bit of money, but more than that, you got to spend a significant portion of brain space, a significant portion of time to be able to have that kind of stuff. And, you know, we were in our 30s and 20s at one time, and we were growing up in whatever craziness we thought we had to deal with. And now the folks coming behind us are doing the same thing, and they're doing the best they can do. And whether we align with them politically or not, I don't give a shit about. What I do align with them on is being prepared and hopefully helping them not make some of the same stupid ass mistakes that me and probably some of you guys out there have made, because we all do, right? All right. Next, this one's kind of neat. The UK is, I guess in Canada and in the US, we have the 72-hour plan to have, enough stuff to survive for 3 days, that sort of thing. Well, the UK just recently put together a new national crisis plan. And of course, this article is written by theconversation.co or .com, and I don't know the company, but we're going to talk about this. And there's some stuff highlighted in a different color in here because, anyway, let's get into it. So, UK urged to get ready for disaster with new national crisis plan, but our research reveals the dark side of prepping, just in case you're wondering. Preppers, those who store food, water, and supplies to survive impending disasters, have a bit of an image problem. Ridiculed for their delusional end-of-the-world outlook, they are caricatured as tinfoil hat-wearing loons. But is their approach to self-sufficiency so extreme? Recently, we've seen energy companies warn about blackouts, urging people to plan for when the lights go out. Looming and actual threats from climate disruption, extreme weather, pandemics, cyber attacks, and AI have led the UK government to launch its ambitious resilience framework. Guys, I'm actually kind of excited about this in a sense. This reminds me of going back to the old civil defense days. And listen to this paragraph right here. It's short, and this meant a lot when I read it. This framework is based on 3 core principles: a shared understanding of risk. So, number 1, understanding that there is a big risk out there and that we all share responsibility in it. Number 2, a greater emphasis on preparation and prevention, which I think a lot of that came out of the COVID era because of all the shit that we couldn't get and weren't able to get. And number 3, establishing resilience as a whole of society endeavor. Here's the last bit. Everyone is encouraged to prepare. I love it. How great is that? So we end up having a major power in the world, not as major as they used to be, but a major government who's saying, guess what, guys? The onus is on you. Sure, we've been giving the government money for years, and people traditionally thought, yeah, they'll come and save us if shit goes sideways. But anyway, no, here we are. The government is saying everyone is encouraged to be prepared. I love it. In this new guidance, households are urged, I don't like this word, but stockpile items, I guess, sure, but stock items, you don't, anyway, stockpile items such as radios, candles, and have ample food in case disaster strikes. Something that's traditionally been talked about anyhow, but I like that. Many consumers secretly stashed essential items, tinned food, toilet paper, batteries, etc., driven by stigma surrounding tinfoil hat preppers, more usually associated with bunker culture, calamity, and disaster scenarios. However, the government has seemingly reversed its stance and is now sounding the alarm about, I'm going to insert there, possible imminent crises, and more importantly, how we're individually responsible for being prepared. There's the word again, a word that has lost or has not been used in a governmental fashion in a long time. Individual responsibility. I love hearing that, because what do they say? That the absolute smallest minority is the individual. And if every person takes care of their own individual responsibility the best they can, we will be way better off to survive pandemics, disasters, or just a simple 5-day stretch of -30 weather. Oh, yeah, that's what we're having right now. So there's somebody building their own toilet paper fort. Now, this is where they can't just leave the article alone. This is where they slide into. Anyway, let me just read it. You'll see. Recommendations around resilience underestimate the invisible and emotional labor needed to implement contingency planning, scanning the horizon for the next crises. Rather than empowering households, the push towards self-sufficient readiness fuels deeper anxiety around loved ones' safety. And if disaster strikes, support beyond immediate family remains essential. Despite the resilience framework promoting a whole of society approach, preparedness inevitably develops into a scenario, here it is, guys, of haves and have-nots, meaning that those with spare cash, space, and time to prepare, and those who do not. This lays the foundation for inequality, resentment, and the erosion of communal ties. And I am going to call bullshit on that. Because we got into prepping because we were dead ass broke. I mean, broke beyond broke. And we wanted to make sure that we were taken care of. Now, when you have more money, can you have cooler preps? Sure, why not? But guess what? We had the old toilet paper closet that all the family made fun of, because that's what got us through when we had less than no money. When we were so close to going to the food bank, we were able to make food from the shit we had in the cupboards because we bought a whole shit ton of dry pasta. Simple as that. We would go and we would buy things like toilet paper ahead of time. And guys, this is when we were making $550 every 2 weeks. We had $1,100 a month coming in with Becky and I and 3 young kids at the time. And oh, by the way, our rent was $550 a month. So guess what that left over? Yeah, not a whole hell of a lot. So here it is. Yeah. Rachel Brown says, major bullshit. What about the apartment prepper? Absolutely. Diane was on the show a couple of years ago. She was homeless, living in her car, and she got herself an apartment and she was prepping. This is where the idea of inequality, let's talk about equity. How about everybody does what they can to make their personal situation better? And this is where the UK is pushing individual responsibility. And then this article from the Conversation is trying to deflect it back to, well, what about, yeah, there are examples in, exceptions to the rule, but simply the fact that they're pushing people to be prepared is not a bad thing. And they say how it's going to increase anxiety. So here's your option: dealing with it ahead of time or dealing with it during. Which one's going to create more anxiety? If you haven't prepped and you try to prep during a shitty situation, or how about you've got, no food in your house and you haven't done any prepping ahead of time, and then all of a sudden you got fired, or for some reason you had to take a week off work and you had no sick days left. Simple as that, right? So when I come down to it, this part really gets in my craw just a little bit. So it says, first, focus on individual resilience, risks, fueling, and everyone for themselves mentality. The prepared will put their own family's needs above others. No shit. Of course you will, because that's what friggin' individual responsibility is. Simple as that. There's nothing wrong with being individually responsible. Of course, you're going to look out for your family before you're going to look out for others. But the cool thing about that, everyone looking out for themselves and their family means nobody else has to be looked out for. Oh, there you go. End of rant. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, those left out. And here's where we go a little bit deeper. And I'm not saying, anyway, whatever. I'm going to stop apologizing for this. This article just kind of pissed me off a little bit. Conversely, the less privileged, such as those experiencing housing issues and precarious employment, who often live hand to mouth, will be less able to prepare. Their survival is likely focused on the everyday rather than planning for a possible eventuality. Yes, and that's where we all start prepping. We prep for the everyday, and prepping, what are the things, what are the basic tenets of prepping? Stay in good health, getting good health, save money, have some food. Those are 3 right there. All 3 of those will make your life better when you're focused on the everyday. And number 1, getting in shape doesn't cost you anything. Learning how to cook and make your own meals is actually cheaper than eating out or buying junk, that kind of stuff. Now, living hand to mouth is exactly how Mrs. Cook and myself lived for many years. We were still able to prep. And in some ways, we were probably more serious about our preps, because at that point, everything we did was a matter of economic life or death. Our biggest fear for many, many years, we talked about this the other night, was one of the utilities being shut off. So, and we never did. We managed to, we were talking about that the other night, many, many, many years where we had no money in the bank account, but we always 100% managed to keep the utilities on. Now, would we have been a failure if we hadn't? No, but we did everything we could to make life better for our kids, whether we had money or not. That's the idea of preparedness. But this paragraph at the very end of the article here kind of set me in. It says, this is good. Real security arises not from isolated stockpiles in individual action, but the establishment of a more community-wide plans for preparedness in the event of a disaster. Now, I'm not arguing with that. I think that both individuals, myself and the author of this article, both want the same thing. We want prepared communities. Now, each of our ideas might be different, but I totally agree with the fact that we need to have a community plan, because when something, for instance, when one of the oil trains comes through Provost and say it happens to, skip a track and we have nasty shit all over the place, well, guess what? It's great to have a fire department who has some of the best hazardous substances training out there in our town. And it's great that they've trained. And you know what? It's also great for us to know, hey, we're going to get out of Dodge if shit like this happens. So simple as that. Community minded, yes. Is prepping a rich person's thing? Oh no, not by any means. I would say if you go on the internet and find most people who have started prepping and who have, YouTube channels, or most of the folks who are in Our Preppers over on Reddit and that sort of thing, you're going to find folks who are struggling and are doing it so that they can have a better life down the road, save money, get healthy, stock food, learn how to cook, maybe then eventually buy a weapon. Hey, anyway, there you go. All right, let's take a look. Community here. Off-Grid Ping says this article is leaving out all the BS that people spend on when they could be prepping. Exactly. And that's what it comes down to. And that's something that Becky and I learned for a lot of years, was that we spent a lot of shit on a lot of things we didn't need. And a ton of our situation was self-inflicted. And by getting more careful with our money and by wanting to prep certain things, we were able to get a little tighter with our money and able to come out of it a little bit better. Don't even worry about all the entrepreneurship side of things, right? So, and then this next one, I can't play it because it's audio and it'll come up as a content match, but just wanted to put you aware that the news is also talking about things that we've talked about on, especially Nicole, for many years on LFTN. So this one right here was an 8-minute audio interview from the CBC, the the Canadian Broadcasting Channel Corporation. That's government funded, but it was actually a really cool article from CBC PEI, which is the Prince Edward Island, for those Americans who don't know, little tiny island next to Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. And she interviewed a local lady who was doing the pantry challenge. And I really liked this. So one thing that I finally got off my ass and I'm stop procrastinating and doing is all the links to all the articles and just about everything I talk about tonight is in the YouTube show notes and the Facebook show notes. And they will also be, if you're listening to audio only, will also be in there. So this was really cool. It's a cute little cute little interview. The lady who interviewed her was definitely more city, but this lady just talked about how she's been going about 2 weeks now without shopping whatsoever. She calls it the Pantry Challenge, and her and a bunch of other ladies on Prince Edward Island are going to see how long they can go without buying anything to restock their pantry. And I really like that. And Sandy Stark, great to see you, said ants versus grasshoppers. Absolutely. And that's the whole mindset of, am I going to wait around and hopefully somebody will hand something out to me? Or am I going to be diligent and I'm going to be like an ant and I'm going to stash away everything I can for the rainy day? Not everything, but everything you can, and that's the cool thing about prepping is that, one person might be able to afford cases and cases of AR ammo, whereas another person might be pleased as punch to have a case of ramen noodles on the shelf because everybody starts somewhere else. I tell you guys this all the time, but I had mustard pickles and strawberry jelly I had this in my very first apartment. It was massive. It was a big apartment. It was the second floor of this 100-year-old home. And in the kitchen, there was like an 8 or 10 foot deep closet that was only wide enough for me to fit in like this. And I had that top shelf and I probably had 10 or 12 jars of mustard pickles and 10 or 12 jars of strawberry jelly. And I thought I could survive a zombie apocalypse. But you know what? I was heading in the right direction, and I knew I was broke, and I knew I didn't have much, and I knew I had to start doing something. Rachel Brown says, I have a lot of organizing to do before I join Nicole's Pantry Challenge. Absolutely. And earlier today, guys, I was trying to find, so sometimes you'll find the, anyway, you could see this in my search history. It was kind of funny, but a lot of times when there's an audio article, you can search and you can find a printed article so that I could have something to show you. So I typed in what I thought was Pantry Challenge, but I accidentally typed in Panty Challenge. So yeah, there's stuff in my history now that was quite funny. So I thought you guys would appreciate that. All right. Next announcement for today, guys, is our sponsor. And we can't forget our sponsor for our Thursday shows. And that is my good brother, Joel Riles of Fortress K9. And we're going to, talking about side hustles and full-time income, that sort of thing. I don't know if there's a better example of life kicking you in the balls, life putting you down to a situation. Joel himself should have been like, you know what? He could have said, I'm not going to prepare for anything anymore. I'm not going to build a business. I'm just going to sit back because life's kicked me too many times. And you know what he did? Instead, he stood up and he built an even bigger business who's making more money now. He's more successful, more happy. So if you want to support him, add the Protection Dog podcast to your ear holes, to your podcast catcher, wherever you happen to be. But honestly, you're like, I don't want to hear about dogs. No. You gotta check it out. Joel is all about building the life you need, building the life he wants. And as long as you don't mind some, physical and some verbal altercations, you'll enjoy it. He is great at hitting you upside the ear with the truth you need to hear. So there you go. All right. Next, guys, this one's good. Give me 1 second here. It's going to move something around. We're going to go over to Workshop Wasteland. And that actually, I really should have added so we have a Telegram group called Workshop Wasteland, and I started it quite some time ago, and it never really took off. And it's the pop culture end of the workshop, because not everybody's into movies and books and video games and that sort of thing. But for me, I kind of really enjoy a good post-apocalyptic movie, book, or TV show. And so I started the Telegram group. I actually had started a YouTube channel that I never really took off or did anything with yet. But we have this Telegram group where a few of us spent some time the other night just reminiscing about some of the first movies we'd seen in theaters and that kind of stuff. It was a really, really fun time. And so if you're looking, just ask in the regular Telegram group and I'll get you the Workshop Wasteland link, because it's a fun little place. But anyway, so that's where this name came from, Workshop Wasteland. And it is my look at pop culture, the dystopian, post-apocalyptic, fictional look at the world. And it's a lot of fun. It's a good old Sparky. Where's the link? Rachel said, I'll get you a link here in just a few minutes. It's a good one. Unless someone else can share it in the Telegram group for me, that would be great. So this week I actually watched a documentary on HBO. It came out December 30th. So if you're interested, it's called Time Bomb Y2K. And I can't show you the trailer, of course, because that'll be a copyright match. But here's the IMDb page. So I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on it. Anyway, let me share. So it starts out in 1996. And one of the very first quotes you get is Bill Clinton and Al Gore, and they're running internet cable through a school. I think it was in California at the time, or maybe it was Washington. I can't remember. And they show footage of what would have been the first live teleconference via, civilian style. Anyway, it was kind of neat. And Clinton said, I thought this was precedent, I guess, but he goes, in the future, the internet is going to bring us face to face, which means we'll have a less and a less need for military confrontations. And I thought, oh, buddy, if you only saw what was coming around the corner, you'd probably be wrong. But they had a lot of cool quotes, a lot of cool clips working its way through. And I want to give you a quick synopsis of what happens. I can't spoil it because Y2K is 25 years old, but just to give you a quick overview of what happens in it. So it opens in 1996 and they're giving you a countdown up to Y2K. And you get that quote with Clinton about the internet bringing you together and not needing the military so much going forward. And then Steve Jobs says, there's a cool quote of him from way back calling the computer the bicycle of the mind. And that reminded me quite a bit of Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian philosopher, whatever you want to call it, that I've kind of enjoyed. And he always talked about how new technology was an extension of the human body, or new technology was an extension or eliminated old things. So this was the idea. And what Steve Jobs was getting at was computers were going to be able to expand the reach of where you can go with your brain. I thought that was cool. Then they introduced a guy named Peter DeJager, and I'm actually going to reach out to him to see if I can get him on the show. He is from Quebec, Canadian. He is one of the first people to recognize the Y2K bug for what it was back in 1977 when he worked at IBM. And he makes a quick mention to a TV show called Connections. If you haven't seen it, it is awesome. It's a BBC show that I've gone back and watched quite a bit of from the late 70s, early 80s. And the very first episode is about a blackout. And that was what inspired the movie that I really like. The one from 1996. It's got Elizabeth Shue and who else? The guy from Twin Peaks. Anyway, it takes place. It's a blackout where nobody really knows what's happening, where anybody's going to go. And the entire script was taking from the inspiration of that show Connections. And the movie was called Trigger Point. If you haven't seen, Trigger Effect. And if you haven't seen it, it's one of my favorite. But this whole thing, interconnected, right? So watching this movie, it was like viewing a telescope. It was like looking back on the late 90s and how the world was. It was kind of a weird documentary. It said at the point that 70% of Americans had bought PrEP, some sort of preparations for what could have happened, what may or may not have happened. There is a scene in there where they go to a Y2K survival expo. Something you'll notice is the word prepper is completely absent from this movie because that word never really showed up until just before Y2K. But there's a really uncomfortable scene in there where a salesman is trying to sell a surge protector to an old lady, and he is just talking and talking and talking. And she's like, yeah, I guess I'll buy it. And you figure, you just know it's sleazy. That's all. But it's a really good illustration of what was going on at some of these Y2K expos at the time when people were really upset. They take quite a bit of time to talk, a little bit of time to talk about the Montana militiamen, painted them as terrorists, of course, that they were worried the government was going to use Y2K to overthrow society. They definitely played off the survivalist preparedness folks as crazy. They even introduced the Teotowaki, the end of the world as we know it word. They said that was fairly new. They talked a bit about Christianity and how it was focused on the millennium and the end of the world, and how so many of the TV evangelists were making shit tons of money selling books and movies and all of that about the Y2K bug and how it was going to bring Jesus back and all of that. But I think there was two pieces of footage in the movie that really stuck with me. And the first one was a crazy piece of news footage from 1999 predicting that Osama bin Laden was going to make another attack just after Y2K, using Y2K as, some of the turmoil that could. Anyway, I was like, wow, that's crazy. But anyway, it was kind of neat. Then there was an article or an interview with the guy who ran the Y2K response from the government. And they said, after the fact, do people think maybe our reaction was overkill? And he said, anyone who ever worked on this would not call it overkill. And it kind of ends two things where it ends. It ends with a shit ton of optimism because basically the entire world came together to fix a computer bug that could have been a really, really shitty situation. So there was all this optimism heading into 2000 and 2001 that lasted until about the 9th month of 2001. And then there was a great shot. They should have ended the documentary there, but they went on for about 5 more minutes. There was a great shot of them cleaning up Times Square in 1999, 2000. There were sanitation workers there. They were sweeping, and it was just dead silence. They didn't have any kind of commentary at all. And the guy held up a sign that he picked up off the ground that said the end is near, and he folded it up and threw it in a dumpster. And I thought, what a great shot. Where they found that, I'll never know. But as far as my thoughts on this, is it worth watching? Well, we'll talk about it just a little bit. But first off, it's a narratorless documentary. And I've had a hell of a time in the past watching. So that, you've got basically 3 documentary styles, or I mean, there's more, but number one, you have your traditional kind of Michael Moore documentaries where you have a narrator, somebody who does all the narration. The other one, like the Ken Burns baseball documentaries, where they put a bunch of footage together and somebody makes a cohesive narrative by giving narration over top of it. Or number 2, you have a kind of a hybrid where you take interviews and the subject of the interview is your narrator. So you have somebody off screen asking questions and people filling in the story based on that. Or you have this one, the third style, which is just a clip compilation. And it honestly felt a bit like channel surfing in the 90s. It was okay. The problem is that it came across a little bit, it didn't have a whole lot of punch or effect because you're just basically watching it from afar. And I get that's what they were going for. It felt like a clip show. You know how every so often they would do on, say, Seinfeld or Friends or something like that, they would just bring together all the highlights. That's kind of what it felt like. The soundtrack has this great, at least in the beginning, this kind of 90s techno, it had like a Matrix / Johnny Mnemonic kind of feel. So that was okay. The 90s style CGI definitely reminded me of Lawnmower Man, that sort of thing. But what it felt like? I wrote this down while I was watching it. The documentary felt like reading a letter that was made from magazine clips, if that makes sense. You remember back in the 90s how the people would always send those letters? It would be like a kidnapper letter, and they would cut all these, pieces out of magazines to make a story or whatever. That's kind of what it felt like. It was slightly disjointed. It would have been so much better, I believe, with a narrator who would have kind of tied the whole thing together. Instead, this was basically a highlight of the time leading up to Y2K. So my rating, 3 out of 5 for the nostalgia factor alone. It felt a lot like a YouTube channel that I watch that plays nostalgic commercials from the 80s and 90s. That's kind of where I got it. I got this nostalgia feeling, but I wasn't really, how you're supposed to be entertained, inspired, and educated. Well, it really didn't hit any of those per se. I guess I would call it entertainment for the nostalgia factor. But honestly, if you're looking for a good review of the Y2K situation, there is a podcast out there. It's a 6-part podcast I listened to a couple of years ago. It's called Headlong: Surviving Y2K. And it was way better. Took a deep dive into a lot of the players in the Y2K scenario. And yeah, but if you're looking for, a sit down, play on your phone, have a snack with your wife, and veg out for an hour and a half, and it's slightly entertaining, then yeah, go for this. It's on HBO Max in the US, and it's on Crave in Canada. So there you go. All right. Take a look at the community comments here. Chris Dixon said, "You had me at Elizabeth Shue." Every time I mention Elizabeth Shue, I get him going. And Jeff Stark said, "Our company software was old enough that the Y2K updates were very necessary. We got the coding done in plenty of time." And I think that's what happened. I was too young to know a lot. I mean, I wasn't too young, but I was 19, 18 when it happened. So yeah, 19. I knew shit could go sideways. I didn't know the gravity of the situation per se. I remember going back to 96 or 97, the biology professor at our local high school posted a little article up on his whiteboard. He cut it out of the Chronicle Herald newspaper, stuck it up there. And that was my first foray into the Y2K thing. But this was fun. It could have been done so much better. If you're looking to sit down, like I said, and watch it, give it a shot. But there you go. All right. Next, I read it on the internet. And this is where we take a look at the best from our preppers on Reddit this week. If you're not on Reddit, give it a shot because, you don't really have to, but you can if you want to. I love the Our Preppers community over there, and every week there's something incredible. So this one came from user Running Grain, and it was an update on my Japan preps here in Ishikawa, Japan. So it said, so it's been a few days already, and most, if not all, my consumable preps have been exhausted. We are rationing what is given by the shelter. Thoughts: stay away from the shelters if you have the means, as it gets pretty chaotic past day 3, since people will start getting agitated. And honestly, the lines for the food is only good for day 1 or 2 portion wise. People have resorted to looting and stealing past day 3 in my observation, although Japanese people are quick to catch some of them, but I can't blame people resorting in this acts to survive. So if it sounds a little disjointed, this person's definitely English is their second language, just so you know. This is something. Credit cards are 90% useless. We have mostly used up all our paper cash, and funny enough, we're able to get some cash from my non-Japanese PayPal. Maybe no one uses it here, so they have some extra. I don't know, but it's also a critical value. So this here, some things that I've personally experienced, and I hate the fact that people have to suffer, but that's a reality of life. And one thing I like about our preppers is it's from around the world. And so whenever there is a survival situation, you get, boots on the ground, real life stuff. So this person here said, number one, and this is something I don't think I've ever heard a prepper talk about before, but if you have small kids or an animal, this is great. Get a personal retention lanyard. If you have an extra fund for it and you have a toddler in your family, I thought this was just gimmicky for me, as I wanted to be like, I didn't want it to be a hook and leash for my worry bag, but damn, I was able to clip it onto my daughter's belt when we were moving. I saw some kids getting lost or separated from their parents in the confusion. I am so thankful my wife and I were able to stay intact as a group. What a great little tip, a personal retention lanyard. So if you got kids, especially, something to think about. Get a weapon. This guy's in Japan, of course. He said, I'm actually using my wife's tactical tripod now, pun intended, as a weapon due to the increasing small crimes and theft in her area and shelter. That sucks. This one was a good one. Ferment and dry some meat if possible. This is possibly one, if not the best things we have done to survive. As we saw on day 1, a small grocery store was still open. I used most of my money to get a dark colored container plus maybe 5 kilograms of meat. We also got some salt and cucumber. So I think it's implied there that they preserved the meat the best they could. And he said, I really wish I'd bought the Sawyer Mini or even the Grail, as a water supply is getting sketchy. That sucks. And I wish I'd added more on the medicine prep as well. This person's still in the throes of, the after effects of the big earthquake over there. And, it's great. It sucks to hear that they're suffering, but I really do like taking some time to both, share their suffering and also learn from their lessons. So yeah, I hope you guys like that look. This is something, it's kind of a neat way of doing it. And I had a second quick one here, and this was really good because this is something we get asked all the time. How do I bring up starting to prep with my wife? I'm wanting to start prepping. However, I must get my wife on board. She understands the why. I got isolated after a snowstorm for a few days. Plus, she was a nurse during COVID. But every time I bring it up, she wants to, but never seems fully behind it. I've brought up buying a few packs of freeze-dried food, or those kits, quote unquote. Kind of lost on how to approach this. And there's some really good stuff. And that was from user Ruthless4. And this one comes from user Queen. Said, start with less doomsday type stuff. Build up your pantry so you have a month's worth of food that you would normally eat. Build up your stores every day. At the same time, you should be getting your finances in order. Once she sees you're prepared and looks like just being extra organized, it'll be easier to get her on board with stuff. I like that. Now this one here, I absolutely agree with this approach. Less doomsday. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we are told to have 2 weeks of food and water available in the event of any major earthquake. I was living in Colorado on 9/11, and the grounding of all the flights, plus the fears of people, emptied the store shelves almost overnight. Again, something to think about. And then I like this one here, and this was a super simple, and I really liked it, by a username Yard Fudge. Not sure what that means, but don't prep as in a prepper, but be prepared as in a scout. And I really like that. In other words, focus on the principles of prepping, but change the packaging. The medium is the message. The old, again, there's another Marshall McLuhan quote, but package it different. Be like, hey, I'm going to be a Boy Scout. I'm going to look out for our family because that's the right thing to do. Not because I watched Doomsday Preppers on Nat Geo and now I think we need to build a bomb shelter. So it was all about, I think in this, it's all about the presentation. If anybody out there's had to deal with that, I'd love to hear about it. And this was a cool one. This was from Fat Guy New York. He said, buy some food, freeze-dried type stuff, and make her dinner. But before you do, turn off the main breaker and cook everything via candlelight with sterno. Romantic, right? It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I kind of like the idea. Again, turn it into, it's all about the packaging, right? If you want to sell something to somebody, you have to find their need, and then you have to package it in a way that makes it palatable to that person. And in this instance, it just, I think maybe the wife is a bit turned off by the prepper word. So again, why not package it as a Boy Scout, package it as we're looking after our family, and take your time and include her in it the best you can. All right, next, this one was a good one. This is Cookbook of the Collapse, and I don't have, I'm going to show you. So here, take a look. For those in the audio, you may not be able to see it. There it is. This was the original cookbook that I started before I met Becky, when I lived on that little in that little second-story apartment and people are going to say, that's not a cookbook, Tim. That's just a sheet of paper. Yeah, well, what ended up happening was it kind of got destroyed when water got soaked on it, but we saved all the pages. We had to tear them out of the spiral bound. So I still have them on a clipboard like this. So I'm going to share with you some of my more simple recipes over the years that I have put together that you could cook out of your preps. And one of my most simple ones is baked beans. I love baked beans. I don't eat them very often anymore, but it was something that growing up as a kid, in an evangelical home, we would go to what are called potlucks all the time. I know, hard to believe that a church would have potlucks. And I would love the baked beans that were there. And so I wanted to learn, because I was broke as a joke and I wanted to learn how to make them. And so I discovered that I really liked white navy beans. And I put this, I basically modified it. It's a slow cooker recipe for baked beans, but it worked great. 2 pounds white navy beans, 10 cups of water, 3 tablespoons of salt, half a chopped onion, 1/4 pound of salt pork. If you haven't seen salt pork, it's basically like pork fat. 1/4 cup of molasses, because you got to have molasses in brown beans, 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and 2 tablespoons of dry mustard, half a cup of ketchup. And that was all that is involved in it. And basically you would reserve 2 cups of the bean liquid after you'd let them cook. So here's what you do. You'd put the water, salt, onion, and pork for 12 hours on low. Once they cook, sometimes longer, but at least 12 hours, basically what you would do is you would get them to the point where they were hot enough that if you pulled one out of the water and you blew on it, the outside skin would split. If the skin splits, your beans are ready to be cooked. So the soaking and the preheating is where that happens. The post-cooking, once you add the sugar, doesn't make your beans any softer. So you want to make sure, this is the key to making really good beans. And if you're worried about eating beans and rice out of your 5-gallon buckets because of collapse, this is one of those things. So make sure that you get them good and soft before you're ready to add all the ingredients, because once you do, they don't get any softer for the most part. So salt, onion, pork for 12 hours. Then before you drain the beans, dip out 2 cups of the liquid. Drain the beans, add all the remaining ingredients, including the 2 cups of liquid back, and then cook for 12 more hours on low. There you go. That is my take on traditional brown molasses beans. And of course, what do you need to go with that? But homemade brown bread, if you haven't had it, with slathered in butter, very tasty. I know, carbs, but that is one of the things a person would be eating in a collapse. So that's another recipe. I'm going to do 50 or 100 of these and eventually put them together in a book or a series or something. So there you go. All right. Next is This Week in the Workshop. And this is just a quick overview of all the shit we've gotten done. Number 1, as a brand, the workshop. And number 2, as a family who is trying to build the best life we want to live. So took the kids to the range this week. I took Alice and Charlotte. Those are the 14, almost 14-year-old twins. And my daughter Olivia was home with her husband, her fiance Curtis, my son-in-law, and we took them to the range and we fired the 9mm handgun. I took the 9mm carbine but forgot the clip. And what else? 12 gauge. Even Charlotte shot the little 12 gauge. It had 7.5 buckshot in it, or a bird shot in it, but she did it first time she's ever shot a 12 gauge. And then I took them over to the long range and we fired the 308 a few times, and Charlotte even fired the 308, and Alice did fire the 12 gauge. So I just really take it as an example. Number 1, my son-in-law, this is only the 2nd time he's ever fired guns. The first time was last Christmas with me at the gun range. So I love taking city boys to go out and learn how to shoot, because they get that big smile on their face and they're like, oh, this isn't scary at all. This is holy hell of fun. I love it. And then I take a lot of time to teach the safety. That's the big thing when we go out there is, downrange, booger hook off the bang switch, all of that jazz. This week I freeze dried ham, meatloaf, meatballs, and I just pulled a batch of blueberries out before this episode. So that's about all I got. I only got two batches done this week. I was a little bit slack, but I did filter the oil from the freeze dryer. I've done about 30 batches, which is what they say with that enclosed pump that I have. And there was no smell, no discoloration, no debris, no water. It was as good as the day it went in. So that's what, it was good. And then if you saw on social media, we went to a knife course last weekend. It's the second time. Chris Dixon and myself have gone down together, but this time Chris met us in Red Deer with his niece and his son. And I went down with my brother-in-law, Barrett, my son, Mackenzie, my adopted son, Raiden, and my son-in-law, Curtis. And we spent the night at the hotel, and then we made start to finish a really beautiful, for me this time it's a bushcraft knife. It might be just a little heavy to put in my get home bag, but I might do that nonetheless. We've been dealing with some extreme cold here, and tomorrow is going to be, I think, a high of minus 30. So there you go. Just certain preps, you try to do preps ahead of time, but I can tell you one thing. I'm glad that I put heat in my garage last year in the workshop. I'm glad that I got the metal roof on the garage this year. It's awesome. One thing I do need to do is I need to extend my little vent pipe for my natural gas heater. It's actually letting a little bit of the exhaust back in the shop, and I just need to push it out, because what's happening on those kind of dead calm nights, it just goes out under the eaves and it just kind of hangs there. So just for safety's sake, I'm going to put another elbow on it and vent it out just a little bit further. So huge news. I know I've been talking about this for a while, and I keep saying we're 99% there, 99.5. Well, we are 100% done with the Lloydminster South location. So we now have 2 daycares officially 100% ours, licensed to us, and running and making us money. So I am stoked about that. Actually, I shouldn't say, Becky has worked her ass off for this, and she sent me a picture about 2 hours ago, just before she left the Lloyd South location, of the license with Busy Bees Daycare name on it. So that one is done, and she sent me a text message that said 2 down, and that meant 1 more to go. We're working on getting the Lloydminster North location finalized. So within the month, that'll be, it's exciting, guys. It's exciting. Build the life you want to live. I love it. Apparently there's a cougar in town, and I don't mean the old lady who lives down the street. There was an article from the local town office that said, be aware, possible cougar sighting. I want to tell you something. If you live in a small town, and whether this is on Nextdoor or Facebook, it always follows the same thing. As soon as they say there might be something in town, there's 3 or 4 of the same people who invariably, one person sees tracks, one person sees they actually saw it walk through their backyard, and one person had it on video camera or whatever, but nobody can ever prove it. So we don't actually know if there was a cougar, but there was a cougar scare here in the town. Alice and I put out a new video this week. And if you don't know who Alice is, she's one half of the dynamic duo, one of my twins. And we did an MRE taste test video, which has absolutely been very well received. So we actually have an idea. We've got a shit ton of MREs. We've got other stuff too, some stuff we bought at some Asian markets and different things. Some of that is going to be on the Patreon, which we'll talk about in a moment. But this is going to be a new bi-weekly series, I think. We actually, this is kind of fun. Becky ordered us a spinning wheel off of Amazon, and we're going to put all of the different MREs that we have, and we're going to spin it, and we'll just randomly pick one that way each week. And it was a lot of fun. And it also lets us show off some of the get home bag gear that I have. It lets me test it and learn how to use it. So all of that, but it's a fun thing. So it's not going to take the place going forward of review videos. It's going to be supplemental. It's going to play on the opposite Friday as when the Delinquent Gully Chronicles come out. And it's just something different. It lets us flex our creative muscles, and you guys seem to enjoy them so far. And Chris Dixon says probably somebody's Maine Coon, not a cougar. That's what I was thinking. Rachel said the MRE video was cute. Yeah, Allie's a great helper. I always love having her. Tomorrow night is the Atlas Shrugged Post-Apocalyptic Book Club. We're doing chapters 4 through 6. So if you want to join, let me know. We got the book club where we the actual Telegram group where we kind of share the link and that sort of thing. Sunday night, I have Jordan. She is a podcaster from the Prepper Broadcast Network. She's coming on the show, and we're going to she actually reached out to me, and she has an idea she lives in South Carolina, and I know if you guys didn't realize this, but I live in Santa Claus View, or Santa Claus Land, and we are going to do it's going to be a north and south perspective on prepping, how to get ready for hot weather and storms, and how to get ready for cold weather and all the bullshit the prairies come on. So it's going to be a good episode. And next we got, oh yeah, this was kind of cool. There was a package showed up from Amazon the other day. I know, big friggin' surprise in this household. I opened it up and there was 3 bags in there. And I asked Becky, I said, what are those? And she goes, well, they are individual grab and go bags for everybody. And I thought, so traditionally we've just had the one family one. And then when I travel, I've kind of built my own. So what's happened though, is that when we travel, sometimes we have overlap or sometimes we forget things and we only have one specific bag. So Mama said, why don't we each have our own bag, which I thought was great. So she actually bought these cute lady bags for her, Alice and Charlotte, and everybody is going to have their own grab and go bag. So I'll have one, she'll have one, and Alice and Charlotte will each have one. So it's each of our responsibilities to take it when we travel and each of our responsibilities to take it if we ever have to bug out. I love the idea, and it's going to simplify things, and it's going to make our individual packing a little bit easier. Strong Roots Resources, Kerry Brown, a good fellow delinquent. He is getting ready to build his internet empire, and he just launched a Telegram group. He went from 0 to 50, over 50 members just the other day. So if you're into, wild edibles and not so much homesteading, but permaculture, that sort of thing, join his group. The link is still pinned in the Telegram group right now. And one more thing, I want to share with you guys something, because sometimes things aren't always what they seem. So I have been, you guys, so I think I'm day 83 on eating way better. So charting my calories, eating a calorie deficit, and I've been working on this Coach to 5K program. So I officially finished my 6th of 8 weeks of this Coach to 5K, and I'm getting pretty close to running a full 3K, which is great. Not tooting my own horn or whatever, but I've been losing some significant weight, and I'm feeling really good. But starting just before Christmas, I was getting a little bit dizzy, and I thought, what the hell's going on? And it kind of worrisome. Honestly, I thought it was my blood pressure, and I would test my blood pressure, and it was about normal. So I switched my blood pressure pills, whatever, to the morning, blah, blah, blah. And I actually went to the doctor yesterday because it was kind of hit or miss. And then for like the last 5 days, it's every day so every day from about noon on, I was getting anyway, it was like vertigo. So you would look down, and speaking of Jordan, there she is. I was just bragging her up a minute ago. Good to have you. So so I was in the afternoon, I couldn't do anything that would require me to stand here and look like this. I was getting vertigo, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I went to the doctor, and he said, we'll do blood work or whatever. And I haven't even got that back yet. But he said, it's probably an electrolyte deficiency. And I thought, well, I don't know. So I went home that night and I drank 4 bottles of Gatorade. And within half an hour of the first bottle, it was almost all gone. I drank 3 more this morning, 100% gone. So I don't want to jinx it per se, but remember, when you're dieting and exercising and that sort of thing, shit can go sideways. Your body's used to having all this junk in there and all this stuff. And, sometimes you upset the balance and you're not intentionally not eating the right things, that sort of thing. So it looks like I was having a pretty nasty electrolyte deficiency. And so that's why I've been drinking Gatorade Zero tonight. I also have some of these little pouches. I don't know if I've got one here to show you or not, but they are made by Gatorade. They're called Propel. Let me show you right here. And right there, I love these. I had to buy them from the States, but they're Propel little packages. You add them to a bottle of water, you shake them up, and Bob's your uncle. So yeah, I feel way better. And Chris Dixon says it's an electrolyte deficiency. It's that time of the year too that you drink less water and you're eating way less. Good catch. Yeah, I felt like a bag of shit. Like I was out there yesterday afternoon trying to put together some furniture for Becky. And, I'm fine if I'm up here looking like this, but when I was out blowing snow or putting together furniture, I was just, anyway. So I was so much better. Feel so much better to to do it anyway. But yeah, everybody here's got some great suggestions. Jordan drinks a gallon of water a day. I try to do my best. Yozik said, sorry. And Rachel says it's better to make your own. Gatorade is so much sugar. Well, this one here is Gatorade Zero, so there's no sugar, but then you'll say, oh, but it has the worst shit, and try Liquid IV. It's way better. I don't even know if I can. Yeah, anyway, maybe I could, and Angie says I add salt to my water. So the night we were at the hotel in Red Deer for the knife making course, I barely slept. I had a nasty headache, and I should have clued in right then, because whenever I'm doing strict keto, about 2, 3, 4 weeks in, I have a night where I can't sleep with it. Just the worst migraine in the world. And somebody told me drink salt water. So I'd go out and put a tablespoon or whatever, I don't know what it was, of salt in a bottle of water, down it. And I did a second one. And yeah, it was awesome. So there you go. James Carroll, thank you. He says less than 20 people watching all night. Guess they're watching the Yemen news. In here, I think I saw us top out at 22 tonight. So it's not bad. But this show has been getting tons of rewatch, and I love it. So thank you guys for all this support. So anyway, just if you're out there deciding to take care of your health a little bit better, because I know I certainly need to, then remember, sometimes shit can go sideways when you're doing it. So just pay attention to it. There you go. Okay, we got 2 more segments tonight. And Chris Dixon says it must have been the White Owl that gave me the headache. It probably was. Yeah. I had two glasses of bourbon that night too, which probably didn't do me any favors whatsoever. So let's get into this is the segment called Must Be Nice. You guys know where that term comes from, but this entire thing is just all about building the life you want to live. And I love this. I found this article this week from the Daily Hive. And again, this seems to be a theme lately, is how to do the best you can with the least when you don't have a whole hell of a lot. And this one is, how can Canadians, and we're going to you can insert Americans as well, start an emergency fund on a tight budget. It's a great one. There's some good tips here. We'll give the 50-mile view of it. And if you're wondering what that purple thing is there, that is Canadian funny money. That is a $10 Canadian bill. At least the old one was. So how to start saving on a tight budget. Said 51% of Canadians under 35 are living beyond their means, and 44% of non-retired Canadians between 55 and 64 have less than $5,000 saved. Isn't that crazy? Ooh, man. Anyway, I get it. So number 1, how do you start saving? Identify areas where you can spend less. And again, here comes, are there subscription services you barely use? Yeah, there are. And Becky and I need to look at them and get rid of some. Can dining be swapped out for more home cooked meals? Again, stupid, simple little things, right? Even small adjustments like opting for generic brands or cutting back on that daily Starbucks run can free up cash. But it's about changing your mindset. Right here is great. It's all about being mindful where each dollar goes. And I like that. Number 2, make a savings contract with yourself. Draft a simple agreement that outlines your savings goals, the amount you aim to set aside regularly, and the specific purpose of the fund. This contract acts as a tangible reminder of your commitment, making it harder to backslide. I'm a big fan of putting things on paper and of making your goals public. Now, there is something to be said for doing something in quiet and coming back and showing everybody what the hell you've done. But it is, let me just put it this way, it is way easier. It would have been way easier for me to fall completely off the wagon if I hadn't have joined the Camp Hope group that Yozik put together for the workshop. If I didn't have somewhere where I could pop in every day and say, hey, guess what? I just finished week 6 of my Coach to 5K. Or guess what, guys? 83 days of tracking my calories and for the most part staying well below my allowable limit, that kind of thing, right? So making your goals public and making them tangible, putting them on a piece of paper, both help you concentrate a little bit more on saving money. Use a savings app to round up purchases. This is cool. I've never used it. I don't know if any of you do, but utilize a savings app that rounds up your purchases to the nearest dollar and deposits the difference into your emergency fund. Simple. I like that. And number 4, set aside a set percentage of each paycheck. Many banks allow customers to create automatic savings plans that will take a percentage or set dollar amount from each direct deposit or paycheck. Absolutely. And number 5, and this is why I brought this article on. You guys ready for this one? Start a side hustle specifically for savings. Holy shit, do I not love that exact thing. Another intentional step you can take take your savings to the next level is start a side hustle with a specific intention of using it for savings, considering signing up for rideshare, blah, blah, blah. But what I like even better is use your technical skills like photography, social media management, web design to make extra money. Simple as that. I love it. And I got a couple of comments here from the delinquents in the live stream, but the one I wanted to mention right quick is Jake just said, I love that diesel heater. And there's a reason that diesel heater, you guys know how Amazon and everybody puts these up here. Well, I got one of those for Christmas. It's in the box out in the garage. Becky bought it for me. She likes to buy things that I can make reviews on. So you will definitely see a review coming up on that diesel heater for sure. So if anybody's wondering why are you talking about diesel heaters when we were talking about saving money, well, it's because it came up as one of those ads from Google. So we got some good, definitely some good comments here from the community. Back to the electrolytes thing. Yozik said, look to see what Dixie used for hiking. She used something with no artificial flavors. I use Zip Fizz, but has artificial sweetener and caffeine. I wouldn't mind something with a bit of caffeine here and there, but I actually 2 days been off coffee and pop as well. Diet pop, of course. But yeah, there you go. Netflix went up to $25. It's not worth it. It's just not. I mean, that's half of what we used to pay for cable right there. Chris Dixon said the one thing we need to do, Amy just did her podcast on that, need to check what is an automatic withdrawal from our credit cards and bank accounts. It's so easy, guys, to let those things just accumulate over and over and over again. And it is, you know, we are horrible at that. Not sitting. We used to be, you know, when times were a little bit tighter, we would sit down once or twice a year and we'd go through everything, but we let it slide now. Jordan, she crochets and she does a damn good job at crocheting. You should see some of the stuff. Last 2 years, she's been my table buddy right next to me. So my booth at Prepper Camp and then hers and her man are right next to me, and her new baby this year as well. So, and Yozik says, I've been putting money aside last couple of months to pay off my daughter's school loan when she graduates at the end of the month. I love you, man. That's awesome. John Palmer got a diesel heater for Christmas. Hey, John Palmer, good to see you. Pretty sure John Palmer inspired this month's patch of the month. So when you see that come out, you'll know. And Off-Grid Ping says, I love my diesel heaters. They work very well. Yes, I actually seen one or two of those in your Homestead Apprentice application video. All right. And the last segment of the day is the community nail bag. Yes, I said nail, not mail. We got to keep with the workshop theme, don't we? So these are good. I didn't actually put them up on the screen, but this was a really cool one. I got this from the forum on my website. It's a delinquent named Jesse. And he said, hey, Tim, I started helping out at my church hanging TVs this week. They wanted security cameras installed. Now they insisted that I bid the job. It was a really scary thing, as this was the first job I'd bid. I'd like to thank you for pushing me to try something, and eventually I'll find my place. I got the job. I factored in some tools that I needed. So now I'll be even better off for the next job. Thank you again. I love it. I messaged Jesse and said, do you mind if I share that? Because he's doing exactly what needs to be done. And I friggin' love it. So thank you for sharing that, Jesse. My goal in life is to help as many folks as I can to build the life they want to live like that. And so anytime it happens, send me and let me know that you have started, because, oh, it's great. Love it. All right. This one was Eric on YouTube. He said, so my main question, and this was regarding inverter generators. So if you know about inverter generators, they have a clean power so you can run sensitive electronics. Well, this guy, Eric, said, does a portable plug-in space heater count as a sensitive electronic? That's the main thing I want to run on my generator. And I thought, what a great question, because I had never thought about sharing that with someone. But no, it doesn't. It's a resistive load. So they can actually take quite a bit of an up or a down drop. What's really cool about space heaters is they're one of the things on the Blue Eddy that I did a review on a little while ago. It had that heavy lifting mode where it actually drops the voltage and allows it to run a 1500 watt space heater, but at like 1000 watts. So anything with a resistive load is perfect for dirty power generators, in case you're wondering. Next, Oscar on YouTube wanted to know, how far should my generator be from the outside of my home? I have a very small yard. I get that question a lot, but I thought, you know what? It's a good one to share with the community again. 15 feet at minimum, 20 feet if, kind of depending. Some people recommend 15, some say 20. So you pick what you want. But the main thing is, point your exhaust away from the house if you can. So that helps a bit. Try to make sure if you have the option to not have the prevailing wind blowing the exhaust toward your home, and make sure if on the side of the house where the generator is, that if you can, keep your windows closed. Those three things are going to eliminate most of your risk for, carbon monoxide poisoning, that sort of thing. And the other thing, kind of that 15 feet, don't put it 15 feet from your house, but you've got it set on top of something extremely flammable, which is connected to your house, right? So the idea is to pay attention to airflow around the generator so you're not going to poison yourself, and make sure combustibles are removed from the scenario. A cool little tip that I've been thinking about doing a video on, I haven't done it yet. On Amazon, you can buy these fire retardant mats that you put under barbecues. I think I'm going to pick one of those up and do a video on putting that under your generator. Just something if you need to set your generator on a deck or something. So there you go. This one came from Jim on Telegram, and this one made my day as well. And he's actually in the Telegram group, and he shared a bunch of the stuff. He started a business building raised flower beds, and he has a really ambitious goal this year, and I'm proud of him. But he said, "Hey, Tim, I'm thinking about starting a handyman business." That's, music to my ears. Said, "I do all my own house stuff and auto repair, so I have the skills, but need to learn the business side." So this reminded me of something. So I cleaned up the workshop channel on YouTube quite a while ago, and I privated a whole bunch of videos that didn't really fit the theme of the channel, just trying to clean it up a fair bit. And I realized that what I had done was all those original Growing Your Handyman business, those very first 10 that had launched almost 4 years ago, and then a bunch that followed afterwards, they weren't available even via search anymore. So instead of privating them, I unlisted them, and I made a private playlist. So if anybody out there wants the list, man, there is some, that's a haggard looking dude is all I can tell you is when I started those videos. But if you want that playlist, there's 50 or 60 videos on there of stuff I did on how to start your handyman business. And it may end up coming back to the public light. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I really wanted, I'm a big fan of kind of keeping the brand where it needs to be. So anyway, it's there if anybody wants it. And and this was the final question I got. And this was kind of cool that I got asked this, but this was from Thriving the Future podcast over on Twitter. And I had posted pictures of freeze drying meatballs. And they said, "Hey, Tim, how well do thick cuts of meat or meatballs freeze dry? Are there any tips or tricks that you have to get uniform preservation?" And I thought, okay, here we are. So I'm no expert. I've only had this maybe 6 weeks, but I have learned quite a bit. So what I'm going to share with you, and if anybody has anything to share beyond that, feel free. But number one, make sure everything's uniform in size. So if you're going to cook sliced ham, make sure it's all 3/4 of an inch thick or whatever it happens to be. That's the first thing. Then do your best to make sure they're not touching, but especially not overlapping. Overlapping is the worst because it creates spots where the moisture can't pull out per se. Also, this tip I got from Aaron from Two Chicks Homestead: give it an extra 12 hours of dry time. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to make it even more dry because once it's hit its limit, that's where it is. But the biggest thing is when you're done, take your time, run your hand over each tray first. And if they all feel hot, that's a really good sign. Number two, does it break easily? So if it's dry, then if it breaks easily, it's a pretty good chance it's done. And make sure there's no cold spots on the inside. Anything cold on something freeze-dried mean there's still moisture there. So don't let there be moisture. And then a cool little tip I picked up recently, especially for big cuts of meat, you can buy yourself a moisture meter. It's made for checking the moisture in wood and lumber, but it also works for freeze drying. And I picked it up for like $20 on Amazon. So it just has 2 points. You point it in, and if it says 0, you're good. So hopefully that helps just a little bit. So everybody here is saying, and this is actually not a bad idea. Yozik says, redo the videos. Rachel says, I loved your preparedness videos. And Yozik says, redo the videos and add stuff you've learned since. That's not a bad idea. So maybe that will come with time. Maybe that's what I'll do is I'll go back. May not happen. Maybe we'll wait and do, I don't know. Anyway, see, I'm thinking out loud and brainstorming, but I love that idea. So that may end up happening because here's the thing. If I don't redo them soon, I'm going to forget some of the stuff I've learned because the handyman business is quickly going by the wayside, but we can definitely move into the realm of a lot of the stuff we've learned in entrepreneurship going forward in the last few years. So yeah, I think we could do that. So yeah, anyway, maybe it would even be a place for some of the Patreon stuff. So that's final plug of the day. If you're looking for even more Toolman Tim workshop content, I do have the Patreon now. It's $5 a month, $5 US, so $7.50 Canadian or something. And what you're going to get over there is, right now, what's over there is the interview I did with Joel Salatin at Self-Reliance Festival. It's about 20 minutes long. There is another video that's my commentary on the interview with Joel Salatin, which is great. I like that. It reminds me of the old-fashioned DVD commentaries, that sort of thing. So those two are up there. And any review video I do going forward is going to be up on Patreon, so you can watch it ad-free as well. And then there's going to be some more exclusive content, some more food testing videos, anything that I do that doesn't quite fit the channel, but is still preparedness, and I know folks would like it, is going to go up on the Patreon as well. So yeah, I think it would be fun. I hope you enjoy it. I pinned the link here in YouTube if you want. Like I said, $5 a month. I'll put it over in Telegram as well if anybody's looking. But I truly believe that you'll get way more value out of that than the $5 you put in, because it's going to be a great little place. There'll even be an exclusive Telegram group just for Patreon members, so you can make suggestions and that sort of thing. Not that I'm not accessible, but I thought it would be a fun little perk to have. So there you go, folks. Wow. An hour and a half tonight. This show is growing and expanding quite quickly, and I'm really enjoying doing this week in prepping. It's a lot of fun, and I think there's a real need for this, to have kind of a realistic view of everything without the doom and gloom, with having a preparedness and a solutions-based look at what's going on in the world, and a entrepreneurial mindset with a whole lot of it. So anyway, folks, I appreciate it. We had a great crowd in here, a lively discussion in the comments, which I also appreciate. And if you're listening on the audio and this is tomorrow morning or 6 years from now, thanks for taking the time to download the episodes, give it a listen. And one more thing that I don't mention nearly enough, and I really do, and it is the cheapest, actually the freest way to support what I do. And that is share this, guys. So if you like what I do, if one of these episodes jumps up and grabs you by the ear and says, hey, I love whatever it was, just share it on social, guys. Whatever you do, share the YouTube link. YouTube's probably the best, honestly. Share the YouTube link, because that's where the most revenue comes in, and that's where the most eyeballs get. So anyway, with that, folks, I appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow night for the Post-Apocalyptic Book Club. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.